Hey, what's up guys? I recently made an item flowchart outlining the best way to build Kayle. If you haven't seen it already, there's a link in the description below. I highly recommend taking a look, especially if you're new to the champion. The flowchart will guide you with a series of simple questions that will get you to the right items in the right order. It's very straightforward and I tried to make it as easy to follow as possible. I made this video as an accompaniment to explain the merits of the build for those of you interested in why it's the superior choice. So let's begin by talking about the different types of Kayle builds. The Judicator is one of the most flexible champions in the game, with many viable options. To summarize though, the Kayle community generally recognizes three main variants: on-hit, AP, and AD. On-hit Kayle is the most popular of the three, and usually involves attack speed items like Wit's End, Hurricane, and Blade of the Ruined King, combined with a further keystone. Taking 2 out of 3 in addition to Kayle's core caps her attack speed, so on-hit players will often fill the gap with items like Frozen Mallet, Rylai's, or QSS. The last item can really be anything though, from Death Cap to Infinity Edge. Whether it's good or not is another story. The other well-known build is AP Kayle, in particular the Lichbane variant. It's usually taken with Storm Raiders and is a lot burstier, while still providing good sustained damage. A challenger Kayle main in EU West popularized it, but he hasn't actually used Lichbane for some time. The two staples of AP Kayle are Death Cap and Void Staff. Lastly, AD crit builds transition from Zeal-based attack speed items like Hurricane and Phantom Dancer into Infinity Edge. It's the build with the highest raw single target damage, capable of reaching over 1700 DPS late in the game. Unfortunately, it's highly susceptible to counter itemization, skews your damage distribution, and thus is only optimal in very specific situations. Unless you want to do it for fun, it's something best left to the wayside for most Kayle players. My model is a little different. First of all, I don't distinguish between on-hit and AP Kayle. With the exception of Blade of the Ruined King, typical on-hit items like Hurricane and Wit's End synergize perfectly with core AP items. You can and should build a combination of these in accordance with the game situation to maximize your effectiveness. The Blade of the Ruined King is a trap item for Kayle players. Her kit has little synergy with the stats it provides other than the interaction with Rageblade. It is outperformed by Void Staff in nearly every realistic combination of enemy health, armor, and magic resistance. Conventional wisdom is that you should build it against tanks, but even against health stackers like Cho'Gath, it's almost never as good as the alternatives. If you're interested in the numbers behind this, take a look at the description below for a link to my comparison spreadsheet. So what I call AP Kayle is essentially a foundation of the staple AP items, Void Staff and Death Cap, augmented by optional luxuries in Hurricane, Wit's End, and QSS. Hurricane, Void, and Death Cap, or what I coined as the AP Hurricane build, is the standard build order for optimal damage. Now you might be thinking, Hurricane is a crit item. It doesn't make sense to get it with AP Kayle, right? Well, let's find out. Hurricane has an interesting interaction with Kayle's Righteous Fury, which causes it to apply its full single target on-hit damage per bolt, compared to just 40% of AD. The net effect is that Hurricane provides over double the AoE damage that any other item can provide. AP Hurricane does as much damage to her secondary targets as her main target. At full build, this is over 1000 DPS per target, as you can see. In the right situation, you will be dealing over 3000 damage per second to the enemy team. Contrary to popular belief, Hurricane is actually better on AP Kayle than AD, and most AD champions in general. Here's the thing though, you don't have to build Hurricane. You don't even have to build Void Staff or Death Cap. By freeing yourself from the confines of on-hit and AP, you open up strong options to maximize your strength in each game. When you need magic resistance against a double AP team, Wit's End becomes an attractive alternative or addition to Void Staff. Guess what? The MR reduction passive is spread by Hurricane and multiplies the damage added by Death Cap. If you have a problem with Malzahar, a 1300 gold diversion into QSS before returning to your normal build solves that problem. This build is not only highly adaptive to variations in itemization, but pre-game configuration as well. There's a misconception that Fervor is only good with the on-hit and AD builds, but that's not the case at all. Even with just the core items, Fervor adds over 100 DPS against most targets on AP Kayle. It's a perfectly viable alternative to Storm Raiders and is especially good against teams with tanky champions that will give you more opportunities to stack it up. On the other hand, Storm Raiders generally works better against squishy targets that make it easier to activate the speed boost. It's also just a matter of preference, but no matter which you take, AP Kayle is still the most effective choice. Let's get down to why it's really the best though. AP Kayle provides the most overall efficient damage. It has the most burst, consistently better sustained DPS than on-hit Kayle, and stronger penetration than AD Kayle. It's strong in the mid-game and scales deep into endgame scenarios through boots replacement opportunities. It obliterates squishies and melts tanks alike, better than any other build. All power spikes until death cap are cheap. The AoE damage with Hurricane is unmatched. It doesn't suffer from a lopsided physical to magical damage ratio, making it more difficult for enemies to itemize defensive stats against your team. Fundamentally, Kayle is a DPS champion, and this build makes you the killing machine you are destined to be. And best of all, it's easy to reduce the paths down to a series of simple decisions in-game without making it one-dimensional and restrictive. Sure, in a few games out of every 100, it might be better to go AD crit Kayle, for example, but even if you just use my flowchart, you'll still achieve at least 90% effectiveness, and much more in every other case. It's a lot better to just keep it simple so you can focus on the game and improve your play instead. So that's all I have to talk about for now. If you want more detailed explanations, there's a link to an extended FAQ in the description below, and I'm happy to answer any questions. If you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe for more content and check out my Twitch stream. Thanks for watching, guys.